Would you call the roll?
Mr. Whitcomb?
Here.
Mr. Shear?
Here.
Mr. Beveridge? Mr. McKeon?
Here.
Mrs. Schultz?
Here.
Mrs. Felter? Here. Mr. Geary?
Here.
All right. With that, we will get right into it. I think we're going to start with a presentation on sort of the why we're here and set some context and background. So, John?
Yes, thank you. At your table, there's a printed version of our PowerPoint. And I do want to say the reason we are here today at Frontier Trail is today is a professional development day for the district, so our normal venues were not available to us. And we also felt with the discussion next week of the strategic plan that that needed to be front and center in our conversation after a year's worth of work, which is the reason for a special meeting today. I do want to walk you through and make a few comments. I'm not going to read slides to you, but I think it sets some context. I am going to read the quote from former FDA Commissioner Mr. Scott Gottlieb. We have an obligation to act on what we know, and what we know is very disturbing. Kids' use of e-cigarettes has reached an epidemic level of growth. And I think that really sets the context for why we are here today. As we think about it, we're seeing just in 2018 alone, 20% of U.S. high school students used e-cigarettes in the past month. So that's 2 out of every 10 students. And I would say that our numbers are probably very similar in talking to our students. It's the most popular tobacco product used by adolescents. We'd actually seen a decline in the use of cigarettes really over the last decade, and we've seen that reverse with vaping, and that the rates increased by 78% from 2017 to 2018. The next is just talking about the various delivery systems, and they will look and function really to any degree that your imagination can go and design, including thumb drives, clothing that's being designed to conceal and disperse the vapor, so that students would be able to vape in class without detection. Ballpoint pens, you name it, it comes in one shape, size, or way for students to be able to use it, and that's part of our problem. It's difficult to be able to identify, to use. It can be hidden in the palm of a hand. Odor is different than what we think about with cigarettes, and it's part of the issues that our schools face. If you think about what's actually in the e-liquid, of course, there's nicotine, which we know is a highly addictive drug. It stimulates the adrenal production. It affects cardiovascular, respiratory, metabolism. The list goes on of the physical effects that nicotine has on the body. And then as you look at, these are fairly common elements included in the vaping liquids. They are not regulated, so some of them do a better job in dictating or displaying what is included in there. If you look at the propylene glycol, that's a synthetic compound that's used in polyester production and cosmetics. So they have found some of the liquid, including nickel, lead. It's really, you don't know what's there, as well as the vehicle to put in THC and other substances. Flavoring, everything from mint to mango to cucumber, and that is not typically displayed to know how they came up with the flavoring. But if you think about one JUUL pod, the nicotine intake is equivalent to about 2 packs of cigarettes. And part of not only the nicotine addiction, but you think of that liquid component makes it different in the way that the body and the intake occurs. An interesting fact from the U.S. Department of Health was that of JUUL users, 63% didn't know that the product always contains nicotine. So when we think about how that's put together, the nicotine salts that are used and the mix and the combination, if you pick up a traditional cigarette for the first time and you light it, it's not a pleasant experience.
the burning of the throat, the inflammation of your nasal passages, all those types of things. With the vaping, the nicotine salts and the flavors and everything else are designed not to have you have that experience. So it's a much easier way as students begin to vape. There aren't the negative side effects that they feel immediately when they begin to use it. And that allows that high concentration of nicotine to impact them more easily. The other piece of this is we know that the adolescent brain is uniquely susceptible and vulnerable to the effects of nicotine. So our students are at a point in time physically and psychological development that they're still maturing. Their bodies are still growing, their brain is still developing, and yet we have this incredible influence of nicotine and its addictive abilities that are being introduced into our children at a point where they're not fully developed yet, and what implications that has long term yet really to be seen. The next slide is just showing you just the incredible growth of the JUUL products when we take a look at cigarette smoking and tobacco use. Again, 78% increase among high school students from 2017 to 2018. Had the opportunity yesterday with our high school student advisory group to talk to our high school students about your conversation today, and their feedback was very interesting. They talked about, and we asked, what difference have you seen from last year to this year? And they said not a lot. That their friends continue to use. They said the school continues to try to block access, which they recognized has an impact in locking bathroom doors during certain times, having supervision that had to patrol those areas, the discipline aspects. But one of the areas they were most concerned about is how many of their friends vape and want to stop, particularly when you see media lately and they're understanding to a greater degree the effects, but they can't and they don't know how. And that's going to be another issue we're going to have to deal with, is how do we help families as a community conversation to take our adolescents that have become addicted and to help them move away from that. It was a really powerful conversation. And the next slide goes to part of that conversation as well, and that they talked about the advertising and the media. And if you think of our students, their brains and their bodies are still developing, yet the launch parties, the social media, the way that JUUL marketed was directly aimed toward adolescents. So we have them in a very susceptible period of their life, and yet we have some pretty powerful advertising and methodologies to get them to try vaping. JUUL has helped create this problem, and it's largely their product, as that previous slide shows, that our students are using, and they bear the responsibility for the impact it's having on our students and our schools. The impact to our schools, it absolutely negatively impacts the educational process. It's a distraction for students, it's a distraction for staff, and for administrators. It does have an impact on our resources in time and focus. Trying to monitor and police the vaping in school, dealing with the discipline. It is an out-of-school suspension if a student is caught with an e-cigarette or a cigarette. We were one of the first school districts in the state to participate with the Aspire program, which is out of MD Anderson. So our students, if caught during that suspension, it's a 4-hour online program that has regular checks. It's not something you can just take a test at the end. You have to move through the program. And if students complete that with an 85% passing rate on it, then we reduce that suspension. Our students that have gone through that program have felt like it really made a difference in their understanding and attitudes about that. The constant policing of the building. And now that next step as we talk to our students, how do we help them, assist them, support them as they're trying to to walk away from what's become a very addictive habit. So in general, that's the focus and part of the conversation which has brought us here for your consideration today. I know many of you will say this repeatedly, probably in your comments. If you vote to move forward with litigation, it is at no cost to the district. There are no taxpayer dollars. There is no financial cost to the district. We've had a hard time over the last decade in providing the education we need to for our students. And I know that's a concern from some of our patrons and parents I heard from once they clearly understood that this would not impact what we do as an educational system, that actually if we can address this, it helps us be able to take the time and resources that have been necessary to help combat this epidemic and to be able to utilize that in other ways.
No, and I think that's an important statement to make, in that not only is it not financially burdening the district to, if we decide to move forward with this, but quite the opposite. Right? It allows us to regain some focus and put more of those resources towards educating our students, which is the mission. It's what we're here to do. So, with that, other questions or comments from board members?
I would have one question. You mentioned the litigation. You might explain the process to that. If we do go ahead today and move to approve this, what will it look like from our standpoint as a board or as a school district as we go forward?
And we do have representatives from the law firms here today to answer very specific questions. In general, one of the questions I had is this a class action approach? And not being an attorney, the explanation is that made sense to me is when you think of a class action lawsuit, the damages are all the same. So if each of us have issues with the brakes in the car we purchased, they're similar. In this case, it's going to be unique from school district to school district. So at first, it is individual school districts filing suit, but that the likelihood as more school districts join is that there will be some decision at a point in time that they'll be aggregated, and that way discovery and those types of things follow common rules, and based on that, it may come back to the state level, if that makes any sense. And was that clear enough with our attorneys here?
That was a pretty good explanation,
Okay.
Especially for a non-attorney. So the answer is it's our intent, and class actions are where one representative would file a piece of litigation and file it on behalf of numerous other claimants that were similarly situated. As Mr. Allison explained, these cases we look at as very individual in nature. It's our intent to file an individual case on behalf of the Olathe School District.
Okay.
That would be filed in the federal court in Kansas. Where that would end up, there's discussion right now. In fact, there was a hearing yesterday in Los Angeles about where this litigation as a whole might end up, and the possibility certainly exists that ultimately this would end up for discovery purposes with other school district cases in one federal court somewhere in the country, and then that it got tried to move back to Kansas.
Thank you.
I just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity that if we do pass this. I think we've looked at things as a community. You mentioned being part of a community problem, and we've taken on some things like mental health and things like that as a community with other people, and this is one way that we can kind of take part in that as well again. And again, this doesn't change anything necessarily in the school. Our administrative staff is still going to need to deal with these kids and the parents, but hopefully it can send a message that we're serious about this, and shame on you for targeting our kids. So we want safety, and we want to support our kids, and I we move forward.
Others?
Well, I think about this, and, the things we need to be thinking about is, what is the best case scenario? What are we trying to get out of this? And then what would be the possible worst case scenario of putting ourselves up there first and putting ourselves out there forward? And those are the type of things that I think, and that's why it's great to have this special meeting so that we can have those discussions. So we're all thinking about that. And at the same time, so the community can kind of see what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, and what's important here. The vision of the district is preparing our students for their future. And that's not just academically, okay? We need to worry about their health and wellness. And this is all the statistical information that we're able to see, all of this is very much of an epidemic. And it is causing concerns, not only from the health of our students, but as John and Mr. Allison talked about, even being able to take away from that academics, because we're spending so much time having to police this and manage this and work with this. And that's taken away great opportunities for us to continue to work with our students. So when we sit back and think about it, the first question is, why do we want to do this? And again, to me, it comes back to the fact that we want to take care of our students in every way possible that we can. So that makes a lot of sense. On the opposite side of it, that's the question I wanted to just kind of throw this out there. What would be the worst case scenario of us going forward with this? What could be the worst case scenario with this? And are there things out there that there may be some families that look at this and say, okay, so why are you doing this? You doing it for publicity? What are you trying to get accomplished here? Does it get us in any type of trouble? Mr. Allison mentioned it's a no cost to us at this point. So there are no taxpayer money being utilized to pursue this. But at the same time, as Mr. Shannon mentioned, actually it's going to be able to give a give back. If we can make a difference, and if we can really help our kids understand the importance of not doing this, and we don't have to police it as much in the schools, then that's a major give back to us.
Yeah. Well, and we see this so often with other issues. It's not explicitly an education issue, but it ends up falling on school districts because it's affecting our kids. And so this is not the solution, but we have limited levers that we can pull, right? And this is an action that we can take. And so if that's an action that can further the protection of our students, I think we do it.
Absolutely. And I think, again, for the fact that we are a very large district, with 30,000 plus students out there, we have a big voice. And a lot of times that's what it's going to take. One individual doesn't always able to make a difference, but if we step out and we're able to help this and really make this and have that bigger voice and get the community involved, then that's when I think people are able to start taking action and being able to make a difference. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Wouldn't be the first time that this board has taken action and been leaders. So yeah. Other thoughts, comments, questions?
Just looking at the numbers, if we have 20% of our high school students who are vaping right now, that's approximately 2,000 students. That's the equivalent of one of our high schools. And when we look at the addictive nature of the product, I think Mr. Allison indicated a great point. We have some addicted students, and addiction is a very difficult thing to overcome, and it certainly gets in the way. I can think of office workers who have a really hard time adjusting to a non-smoking environment and standing outside in winter weather. We've got students who are really going to have a hard time relieving themselves of this addiction. And we are their primary environment for much of the day. We are going to need support as an institution, knowing how we help those students so that they can focus on their education. So I think there's a real concern that we have coming down the pike, and that takes resources as well.
It does. I actually prepared a formal statement. I am actually so excited about this. I've been trying to get some action on the part of the state since 2017. So my statement of support is this. As child development experts, we know that adolescent brains have heightened sensitivity to the rewarding effects of nicotine. A single JUUL pod delivers the nicotine equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes. The JUUL is so addictive, it has led to the largest ever recorded increase in substance abuse in the past 43 years for any adolescent substance used in the United States. Today, we lay blame for the skyrocketing numbers of our vape-addicted students at the feet of JUUL. Addiction is nothing new. We've been down this road before. Cigarettes and big tobacco, remember? It's the same song and dance, just shiny new smokeless venues. This time around, we know better. Today, we draw a line and we refuse to passively accept the growing mortality and morbidity casualties of vaping. With the bullseye directly on our children, JUUL targeted our students with deceptive marketing practices, sophisticated social media schemes, and child enticing flavors like bubblegum, grape, strawberry lemonade. The unconscionable actions of JUUL have reaped devastating and even irreparable consequences for our students due to the lack of meaningful intervention from the government to protect our children from the immoral profiteering practices of this industry giant. I am proud to support this aggressive and appropriate action to protect our students. JUUL should be held accountable and paid dearly, very dearly, for the epic mess that they have created in the lives of our students that they have ruined. It is my hope that the Olathe School District can teach JUUL a lesson with our actions today, so we get back to work preparing our students for their futures.
Well said.
Thank you.
Others? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move the following resolution to be adopted. And so I'm just going to read this out loud. Whereas the Center for Disease Control and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services offices of the Surgeon General has categorically declared the use of vaping devices is unsafe for kids, teens, and young adults. Whereas the U.S. Food and Drug Administration on September 11, 2018, classified the use of e-cigarettes and vaping devices among teens and young people as an epidemic and a public health crisis. Whereas the CDC has recently warned the public against the danger of JUUL devices and other e-cigarettes due to the occurrence of hundreds of recent illnesses and at least 9 deaths in the past several months. Whereas the CDC has warned that the effect of JUUL device usage on young people can prime the body to become addicted to other substances. Whereas the state of Kansas has identified at least 2 confirmed vaping-related deaths since September of 2019. Whereas on September 9, 2019, the FDA sent JUUL a warning letter detailing improper marketing and labeling practices in the advertisement of JUUL devices. Whereas Stanford research into the impact of tobacco advertising with the Stanford University School of Medicine published a white paper on January 31st, 2019, examining the JUUL's marketing practices and concluding that JUUL's strategy in advertising was blatantly youth-oriented. Whereas the number of students using vaping devices has risen sharply since 2017, and the use of JUUL and other vaping devices pose a significant risk to students' health and education, both in Kansas and across the country. Whereas Unified School District number 233, Johnson County, Kansas, has experienced and continues to experience serious difficulties with students using JUUL devices, which has created a disruption of the district's educational program, which has forced the district to divert resources to curb and prevent student JUUL usage, which has created a health risk for our district students and employees, and which continues to threaten the educational goals and institutional operations of the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Unified School District number 233, Johnson County, Kansas, the district authorizes the firms of Goza, Honold, LLC, Norris, Keplinger, Hicks, and Welder, LLC, Beasley, Allen, Crown, Methvin, Portis, Miles, PC, Jacovino, Lake and Associates, PC, and Wagstaff and Cartmel, LLP, to investigate and initiate litigation and file suit against any necessary parties to recover damages suffered by the district as a result of the manufacturer, markings, and sale of e-cigarettes and vapor devices, and to seek all appropriate relief. The district hereby authorizes Superintendent John Allison to sign all necessary contracts and other documents on behalf of the district. Adopted this 27th day, September 2019, by the Board of Education of Unified School District number 233, Johnson County, Kansas.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheer, a second by Mr. McCune.
Mr. Scheer?
Yes.
Mr. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz?
Yes.
Ms. Felter?
Yes.
Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mr. Whitcliffe?
Yes. All right. Proud of this board as usual. So thank you all for the time in this special meeting, and we are adjourned.
Thanks, Jim.
I thought we used what I tried to get them to do.
Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Okay, if you, any members of the media, if you have additional questions or support that event, and board president or would like to stick around.
It's good to see you.
I'm there a little, I'm
Enjoy representing Talk basketball for as long as I still will. I don't know that it matters, but that's misspelled. I didn't think it.
I am for sure.